Hello, everyone. I think we can get started. My name is Caitlin Edwards, and I'm the Community Events Manager here at Linux Professional Institute. Thank you for joining us at today's webinar. This is the third webinar of the board election series, and this webinar will provide an understanding specifically why you might want to be on the board of LPI and how to run for the election. For the first time, Linux Professional Institute is opening community nominations for its board of directors to be voted on by LPI members in the spring of 2021. In this webinar, we'll learn about what being on the board of LPI can do for the open source community, what being on the board of LPI can do for you personally and professionally, LPI's focus on the individual in open source, how LPI needs what LPI needs of our directors, and how to run. For those of you new to Linux Professional Institute, our mission is to promote the use of open source by supporting the people who work within it. LPI is the global certification standard and career support organization for open source professionals. With more than 200,000 certification holders, we are the world's first and largest vendor-neutral Linux and open source certification body. We have certified professionals in over 180 countries, deliver exams in multiple languages, and have hundreds of training partners. During this webinar, we are encouraging questions, so feel free to ask using the Q&A or the chat box at the bottom of your screen, submitting questions publicly or privately. I will keep track and facilitate throughout the webinar. Please note that in the chat box, you are able to switch between chatting with panelists only or choosing to chat with everyone. This webinar will be recorded, and the slides and recording will be sent out later this week to everyone, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Today's webinar will be led by Evan Leibovitch, LPI's Director of Community Engagement. So on that note, Evan, why don't you take it away?
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. And to everybody, welcome to part 3 of this series. And today we're going to focus on the mechanics of being a director, why you would want to, and how to do it. So just a little bit background on me. So I'm one of the co-founders of LPI from back 20 years ago, and I helped author the current bylaws. So maybe that's why they picked me to do these explanatory things. And without further ado, just to move on to the series. So again, this is part 3 of the series, and I'm not going to rehash things that have been covered before. So if you're new to this, I'm doing one very specific part of the election process. If you would like to know more, I'm going to invite you to go back to the LBI webinar page and look at, have a listen to episode 1 and 2 of this series, where it gives a broader overview and goes into the function of the nomination committee. So I'm going to deal specifically with people who are thinking of being directors of LPI, what we're looking for, and how you would go about doing that. So regarding what the board does, the board is the master of LPI. The board gets to tell the staff what to do. The board is charged with long-term planning and direction, meaning it's not involved in day-to-day operations. That's done by the staff of LPI. So the board gets to make long-term goals, responding to threats and opportunities. So if they see that there's going to be a problem in this country or with this method of promoting open source or this thing to do with certification, it's the job of the board to actually try and see into where things are going, identify opportunities, identify threats, and when necessary, then instruct the staff to actually follow through on seeking out those opportunities and addressing those threats. Major new initiatives that could be things like a new certification program, or in fact doing things beyond certification. When LPI became a membership organization, it was the board that initiated this and followed through to actually do it. So anything major like this, any major changes in direction, any major new projects, usually come from the board first and then are then executed by the staff. The Board is also in charge of making sure that we are transparent in that we have our budgeting process done and we have our auditing process done. As a nonprofit, this is what we do. The board is also involved in anything to do with governance. So if there are changes to our bylaws, our structure, and of course the election process that we're talking about now, all of that is managed by the board itself. And so the board appoints and works with the executive director. So the executive director, Matthew Rice, is hired by the board and instructed by the board. And so it's his job through the rest of the staff to execute LPI's mission as interpreted by the board, is essentially the easiest way to put that succinctly. And so how does the board do its work? It meets online. It could be quarterly when there's a flurry of activity, like when the bylaws were being rewritten a couple of years ago. The board was meeting monthly. But the board can choose to meet however often it wants, depending on its workload. If there's a lot of things to do, it might be more than quarterly, but when things are working normally and there's not a lot of massive activity needed by the board, quarterly can sometimes work too. There is a chat area where the board can conduct its business in between meetings. So if there's issues that come up and if there's anything urgent that comes up, the board is able to act quickly. Most of the board's work is done online. The bylaws allow us to do the work of the board online. Typically, under normal non-COVID circumstances, there would be one face-to-face meeting per year of the board. That in the past has happened at our summits, but could be done in any other way. Just obviously because of COVID, that hasn't been an option in 2020, but going forward, that certainly should be the case. So why would you want to be on the board? And the first thing about it is you're really amongst a really, really good group of people. Your other board members are skilled in open source, they're skilled in governance, they're skilled in all the things LPI needs. You bring something important to the table as well, but you're also working within an extremely skilled group of people. So this gives you the opportunity to not only learn from them, but as you're getting along with them, they become contacts. They can help you perhaps in your own career search. And having this is just a really, really good personal skills builder, personal development builder, that many people that have gone through this have found that it's a good experience for them, not only personally, but in their career, in their career path. But by being part of the board of LPI, you become an important part of the growth of open source. Many different parts of open source deal with different components, with coding, with providing operating systems and apps and governance and so on. LPI is part of this through certification and membership and professional development, deals with the role of the individual in the world of open source. And by being on the board of LPI, you get a chance to influence that. You get a chance to bring your point of view into an organization that is playing a role in the growth of open source, and thereby you're playing a part in the growth of open source. So even if you're not a programmer or you're not technically inclined, technical skills are good, but all other skills are also going to be necessary, as I'll talk about in a moment. But this is your way to contribute back to the community. If you've been able to use open source and benefit from it, you haven't paid for it, this is your way to contribute back. This is how the community works. People use open source, and when possible, they give back to their abilities. And if your skills are such that you're good for the board of LPI, this is a great way to give back. Also, if you're a member of LPI, obviously being on the board will contribute to your professional development units, which then become a part of maintaining your professional standing and certification. So the mechanics. We have elections. As of next year, for the first time, LPI will be having elections. Its members will be voting for a ballot, and they will be voting for the directors. And so what you need to do is you need to run for election. There are 3-year terms, but for this very first year where we're assembling the board for the very first time, things are going to be staggered. So the people that get the most votes will be on for a 3-year term. The next most votes will come in for a 2-year term, and the least amount of votes that still win will get you into a 1-year term. And that way, every given year, we will be voting for roughly 1/3 of the board. In this year, in 2020 at the AGM, we will be repopulating the entire board by election. So it's going to be done a little bit differently in 2021. Subsequent years, there will only be 1/3 of the board that will be elected in any given year. There's one election, 2 ballots, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. So every member is going to be presented with an opportunity to vote for, pick 5 people from this list and 1 or 2 people from this list. So there'll be 2 different lists, and there's ways and reasons why we have 2 different lists. The vote will happen in the spring of 2021, and the final tally will be counted during the annual general meeting of LPI, which takes place tentatively on May 20th. So, as I mentioned, there's 2 different ballots. There's 2 different ways to run for director of LPI. The first one is to go through the nomination committee. The nomination committee I discussed in the last webinar, and is a group of people that have been picked to go through everybody who wants to be, everyone who wants to run for being a director of LPI. And the nomination committee turns all those applications into a slate from which the membership will vote. And so the nomination committee is given a set of criteria and saying, this is what we're looking for the people that are going to run to be a director of LPI. So we're looking for various things, and some are going to stay the same from year to year, and some are going to change from year to year based on what LPI needs. So if LPI needs to have somebody on the board who's strong to be a treasurer, who's able to deal with the auditors, the nomination committee will stress that criteria as they're looking through the people that have come forward. Or in fact, the nomination committee could actually go out into the community and actively solicit people to come in and apply. And so the main thing is the permanent criteria is we're looking for diversity. We're looking for racial, geographic, gender, and other forms of diversity, because the world of open source is not monolithic that way. It's very, very diverse. As Caitlin mentioned, we're in more than 180 countries, and that means that our board ought to reflect that global diversity that LPI has. And we're going to be looking for that within our board. Obviously, it's important that the people that are coming on the board understand and want to promote LPI's mission. And so from year to year, we're going to be looking for different kinds of technical or legal or treasurer skills. Obviously, if you have a background in the field of education, in the field of certification and standards, or in HR, that obviously makes you more valuable as a director of LPI. They'll be meeting more of the criteria, and you'd be more likely to select it as being one of the people on the ballot. And obviously, if you've got experience in nonprofit governance, if you've already been on the board of a nonprofit and know how it's run and have that kind of background, that's also a value too. So these are the criteria the nomination committee is going to be looking for as it's going through the people that have applied. And obviously, the ones that are stronger in these criteria will be the ones that the nomination committee puts forward on that ballot. There's going to be a second ballot, and that's not vetted by anyone, but only LPI members can apply. So if you are a member of LPI and you can get endorsements from 20 members, which could include yourself, so yourself and 19 others, if you have those endorsements, then you immediately get on the member nomination ballot. There's no vetting, there's no criteria. If you are a member and you can get the endorsement of 20 other members, you go on this ballot. And so everyone who qualifies this way, every LPI member who gets the endorsement of 20 other members gets on that ballot. And so just going over, I presented this whole process last time, and it goes through the entire election process. So I'm leaving it here in case you're looking at the video and you want to step through it. Um, the board is making the criteria. It's fed to the nomination committee, and if you're a director, then you basically go to step 3. You fill out an application on the web indicating that you would like to run. There's a single web form that's going to be used for both processes. And as you can see on here, there's a 4A and a 4B. If you come in on the nomination committee slate, they will generate one list of candidates, and the other list will be from every LPI member who gets 20 endorsements will be on that. And every member will be given a ballot and is asked to choose from pick, say, 5 from this column and 1 or 2 from this column. And that's the way that ballot will work. The next webinar I'm going to do will actually deal with the election process and the campaign from the point of view of a member who's looking to pick the right directors. From the point of view of the director who's looking to run, you can go through either of these processes. If you're a member of LPI, you can go through both. If you're not a member of LPI, you can only go through the nomination committee. So what are the times and how do you do it? So everyone who wants to become a candidate for director of LPI should apply at that web page at the top, and that link will appear. I'm going to try and get it on different parts of the LPI website, and but this is the place where you apply, both through the nomination committee and as a member candidate. And so there's 2 different deadlines. If you're applying through the nomination committee, your deadline is January 17th. If you're trying to get 20 endorsements and you're an LPI member, then you have until March 10th. What this also means is that if you're a member of LPI, you can apply through the nomination committee. And even if they don't accept you for their slate, you still have the ability to get 19 other endorsements and apply through the member nomination process. At that point, we will announce in mid-March the candidates on both slates. There will be a campaign through which all of the candidates, all of the people who are looking for election, will post their bios on our website. Members will be able to check out their bios, check out their campaigns, their manifestos, if you would, ask questions and answers, and the voting will take place up to and including the general meeting on May 20th. So that goes through the director process in a nutshell. And so, Caitlin, at this point, are there any questions based on the presentation so far?
Thanks a lot, Evan. No, we have no questions so far, which only says that you did a wonderful job explaining everything.
Well, as we've talked about earlier, this is a governance process. It's not the most entertaining webinar I've ever done, but it's an important process. This is crucial to the operation of LPI, and having good people on our board is very, very important to LPI doing the right things going forward into its long-term planning and into its ability to serve its mission of supporting the people that work in open source. So if you have an interest to support LPI's mission, you have any of the skills that I talked about, especially if you're living in another part of the world, or you're part of a group that has traditionally been underrepresented within governance of LPI or other nonprofits, I invite you to apply. It's going to be a great experience. I've been on the board of LPI for some time. I was its first chair of board of directors 20 years ago. And you really do play an important part in the direction of LPI, and thus in the direction of an important component of the broad open source community. And I will wrap things up at that. Obviously, if there's any other questions, we can take them. I'll give, there's an email at the end of this. The next webinar that will deal with the election process from the point of view of the member of LPI, of how you're presented with the ballot and how you vote. That will be done January 8th. And so if you have any other follow-up questions, please send them to governance@lpi.org. That website at the bottom goes into detail about the entire election process, including everything I've been saying here and in the previous webinars. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you for making it through this webinar. And I look forward to your participation in the governance of LPI. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Evan. Yes, so again, this webinar has been recorded and the slides will be shared amongst everyone who's registered along with all the important links as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. And again, if you do have questions, please follow up with myself directly or the government's email address that Evan has outlined as well. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.